We are back with some very, very important college football news that I myself am late on reporting on, even though it's already happened days in the past to this point. But even with that being said, gotta set the stage for something of this magnitude. Saturday, October 11th, 2025, and you have this Penn State football team just in a complete I don't even know what to say, what to call it at that point. Again, like I did say in the recap, if you just lose to Oregon, people could get past that. But then you proceed just around a week later to lose to a UCLA team who was winless at this point. I don't care about the fact that they beat Michigan State last week either. To that point, they were winless. They hadn't held a lead all season, and they had been struggling to generate any offense. Yet you lose to them 42-37, and just like that, you're knocked out of the top 25 after being one of the top two teams in the AP preseason poll. It could not have gotten off to a much worse start in, conference play for them. Again, that vanilla-ass schedule clearly wasn't enough to make them as ready as they should have been for some of the most important games of the season. But for Penn State, with them being as good of a constructed team as they are, there was still a path for them to at least be relevant enough to become ranked again, maybe not necessarily get in the CFP or contend for a championship like they did last season. They could still very much contend for a bowl game on the New Year's 6th. They could still make themselves a good enough roster to at least thwart the opportunities of some of the other biggest opponents they would have to face off later on in the season against, like Ohio State, for example. All they had to do was win out, and you'd think that they could be straight. You go into that game against Northwestern, and they were also favorites of more than 20.5 points in that one. Should have been an easy game. It normally can be, facing off against a team like that. And what proceeded to happen for the next 3 hours and some change just slowly but surely drain the life and energy out of Penn State fans in that stadium, Penn State fans watching on TV, Penn State fans passively hearing about it, any way you can think of. Their faith, all their faith in this team, gone in one fell swoop. Their offense couldn't generate much of anything against this Northwestern defense, and then they allowed Northwestern somehow to sustain drives for long enough to get into field goal range and consistently be productive from that area of the field. Not only did, in the most grueling way imaginable, did the Nittany Lions lose that game, effectively just reaching what might have felt like rock bottom in that very moment for them after starting off 3-0 this season. They also lost Drew Aller, just adding even more gas to the fire, rubbing even more salt in the wound. And from that point, they had to do some tremendous deep digging into what exactly they wanted their identity to look like after something like this. Because for as long as it took Penn State per se, even if they didn't really have the greatest resume of winning the big games, they at least had some sort of culture, some sort of identity to fall back on in these situations. Those two things happening in tandem with each other might have served as a culture breaker. And from that point forward, the brass in the university's athletic department had to question just about everything when it came to the direction of this football team. And with that, they made a decision that honestly people have been calling for, per se. But no one truly expected to happen, especially at this stage of the regular season. But they would do that because on Sunday, as I am trying to watch the NFL action kick off, and after I got the damn recap video out, I would look briefly to the ESPN ticker, and I saw breaking news. Penn State has fired head coach James Franklin. I was like, oh my fucking goodness. They finally did the thing. I was in absolute shock. And you know, it did take me a second to snap back because I was definitely thinking about a lot in that situation. And I would say that one of those first thoughts was, well, given his track record, why the fuck did y'all wait for this long to make it happen? When you've seen that he consistently has underperformed in the big moments. What the fuck took you so long to make this decision right here and right now? And then they released the numbers, and then I started to understand a little bit more. So per, I guess, one of the initial ESPN reports here that came out, I guess, within the first few minutes after that report, quote, Penn State has fired coach James Franklin after 12 seasons, the school announced Sunday. Franklin is owed more than $49 million, according to his contract. It's the second biggest buyout in college football history behind only Jimbo Fisher's $76 million buyout from Texas A&M, end quote. We talking, like $49 million, bro. Again, there's just no, I just, oh my god, that is a steep price for a person in James Franklin, who, again, yes, he has a good overall record with the school, but, you know, in this game, I guess people are going to judge you by titles. He doesn't have a single one to speak of at this point. And yet, they decided to make that kind of investment on this man. That seems pretty fucking bold to me. Why would you capstrap yourself in that situation? No wonder you wanted to prolong this and try to make this work for as much time as you possibly could. Because you gotta spread that out across years. And you're just committing that to one person. That is leaving you at a sort of disadvantage in terms of accounting for other sort of athletes who might want NIL compensation from your very school. The kind of money that you're paying him to consistently fall short is directly taken away from other players' opportunities to even be a part of your team if money is an incentive that lures them into playing for you. But there is a little more that goes into it. They weren't incredibly blind and oblivious to that fact that, I mean, bro, if you terminate this thing, you're going to have to forego all that over to him. And there's no question about it. As this quote states later on in this ESPN article, former athletic director Sandy Barber signed Franklin to a 10-year contract extension worth up to $85 million in 2021. According to terms of the deal, Penn State will have to pay Franklin's base salary of $500,000, supplemental pay of $6.5 million, and an insurance loan of $1 million until 2031. Oh boy, see. Man, I know we are talking about college football right now, but just think about this. One, there are clearly incentives in this thing if it's worth up to $85 million, they said. I would have supposed that, because there are, Coach of the Year awards and things like that. But I assume that if Franklin either won a championship with the team, got a high enough ranking at AP number 1 in the nation with the team, if he produced a Heisman winner, I believe that things like that would have probably played into him getting even more money in this situation over the course of these years. So that's the most important thing from that standpoint. But again, given the length of the deal and his, termination early at about the halfway point of it, and a little change, moving it all the way out to 2031 makes sense here. But just think about this. You have that going on, right? This is up in 2031. Even with it being as steep as it is. Meanwhile, by this same time, we all know Bobby Bonilla Day and the Bobby Bonilla contract that the New York Mets gave him. If I'm not mistaken, that entire thing still will have a few more years on that payout to Bobby Bonilla every July 1st. Meanwhile, this ends in 2031. Just got to put that into perspective. That's absolutely crazy. And also, from the Jimbo Fisher standpoint, I do remember the Jimbo Fisher situation. And again, similar thing with him coming over from Florida State. Yes, he won, unlike Franklin, a national championship with Florida State at the time, and they were also consistent contenders. Once he got there to Texas A&M, you could understand why they went after somebody of his caliber as a coach. And then, honestly, while Texas A&M, I can just check this right now. I don't think that, if I'm not mistaken, Texas A&M was that bad per se under Jimbo Fisher, but it clearly didn't live up to expectations. You also had a lot of different stuff going on behind the scenes, unfortunately. With just different relationships with other coaches and with, different players that just caused them to not really be all that well loved by the end of his tenure at Texas A&M, unfortunately. Yeah, let me see this. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, again, they were definitely up there because of the prestige that he offered. But they didn't really find all that much success. And that's why they had to fork over $76 million to the man. Crazy, crazy sum of money. That is still, if I'm not mistaken, the largest in college football history. We're very much nearing that territory with James Franklin. And again, by the end of his tenure at that point, man, he was in the same fucking boat. Bruh. Man, look at it in any fucking stat imaginable. Okay, One, the fact of the matter is that you did end off your tenure losing 3 straight games and 2 straight games to undefeated, well, not undefeated, but unranked teams rather, while being favored by greater than 20.5 points, which I think is something that hasn't happened in ages. That's not the sign of history that you want to be a part of. And then, oh my goodness. As this CBS Sports article by Hummer on the same day puts it, man, quote, "It's easy to dunk on Franklin for what he hasn't done. There are the 15 straight losses to AP top 6 teams, the 1-10 record against Ohio State, and only 1 conference championship in 11 seasons." End quote. We have so much more here because it's absolutely astonishing stuff when you really break it down and you aren't a person, a Penn State fan who directly is suffering inside as a result of all of this shit in big games. It's actually crazy. Like, as this ESPN article also puts it, they got a little chart here. James Franklin's losses at Penn State versus AP ranked teams as an AP top 10 team and in AP top 10 matchups are the most or top for the most by a coach since 2014. We're going in, all right? 29 losses versus an AP ranked team. 19 losses as an AP top 10 team. 21 losses versus an AP top 10 team. And 12 losses as in an AP top 10 matchup, rather. Are all at or near the top of some of the worst. A 4-21 record in AP top 10 games overall in his tenure as a Nittany Lion head coach. Like, it's just it's not acceptable, and it's laughably bad. Even worse is the fact that you also still have this standing from like the Notre Dame game last year, because I had a fucking, man, that immediate aftermath, watching the fucking Scott Van Pelt show after that fucking game was just ridiculous, because they just ripped off some of the craziest shit I've ever seen. Not only in that game did you have Drew Aller at this point go for net negative passing yards to fucking wide receivers. Yeah, I'm still on that shit all these months later. But you also had them state that in AP top 5 situations, James Franklin was, and by this point still is, because the loss to Oregon happened when Oregon was still at number 6, stands at 1-18, the third worst record by percentage all time, with a minimum of 15 games in any era of college football. Just, it's like, it's so crazy, because, like, and I guess with the way that Northwestern and UCLA did it, now it's gotten to a point where any single team, and that's got to be the worst feeling in the world. Like, yeah, Franklin typically would do fine in games like these, but now just any team imaginable, throw out anybody out there, and on top of you consistently underwhelming in the face of ranked competition, now every single team is licking their chops when they face off against you, because you know they know you're about to pull off some kind of fucking disaster class, bro. That's not okay for somebody who, again, just last year was literally in the mix of contention. It's like the foundation is somewhat there, but then it constantly crumbles and has to get reset and restructured because of one crucial loss at one crucial moment in a given season. The worst feeling to have. Like, you're good enough, you're clearly good enough to be a threat on most days. But when you go up against the big dogs, you don't have anything to show for it, much of anything at all. And eventually it got to a point where they just got sick and tired of this shit. As much as I can sit here and consistently drag on James Franklin, because again, a 16%, as this ESPN article also states, 16% winning percentage against AP top 10 teams is tied for the third worst record by a coach at a single school since the poll era began in 1936, according to ESPN research. What in the absolute hell, dude? But hey, like the CBS article said, it is easy to look at all that and consistently go ham in talking about the shit that James Franklin hasn't done, because it is so astronomically fucking bad. You can't just get away with not addressing that and taking that into account at all. Like, that is, unfortunately, going to be a part of his legacy as a Penn State head coach. That does come with the territory. But as a lot of these other articles do state, in a really good point to understand here is that, for all the shit that you will give James Franklin, maybe deservedly so, there's no denying that with his presence at Penn State, from what could have been for that school, oh yeah, he definitely turned them around. And it took some fucking work. The ESPN article also makes note of this, but I want to get this quote from the CBS Sports article from Hummer here. It's going to combine multiple things. But yeah, let's put it like this, all right? As this quote states right here, there was also a lot of winning. Don't forget that Penn State was a disaster after the firing of Joe Paterno in 2011. Bill O'Brien helped study the program for 2 years, but Franklin did the work of rebuilding the foundational structure of the program, and he did nothing but win while improving the stability of the program. He had only one losing season in 11 years, and that was during a weird 2020 COVID season. Yeah, Franklin failed to beat the best teams, but until this October, he almost always beat everybody else. That's really hard to do in college football, especially in a conference like the Big Ten. Franklin finished in the top 12 of the CFB playoff rankings 7 of the last 9 years. That's consistency all but 5 or 10 teams nationally would be thrilled with. End quote. Let's break it down. Penn State, when you look at pretty much the end of the 2000s, beginning of the 2010s as well, with the entire case surrounding both Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky, when it came to those harassment crimes, all of the misconduct going on in that locker room and behind the scenes, away from where anyone else was really made aware of what was going on, up until that entire case went national. All right? The kinds of stuff that them niggas were fucking doing to players, and again, those are not allegations. These are well-documented cases that have been reported over some years now. The kind of shit that was going on there and how it all got released into the public eye, put that football team in such a tough position, put that school, pretty much, their reputation, into the fucking shredder for some years. And you will still get mentions of that because, again, the sexual abuse that was going on behind the scenes, let's just call it what it is, like, that is exactly what it was. That kind of shit going on there was no place for it. It was absolutely not acceptable. And they both got their comeuppance in Paterno and Sandusky for what they did and what they oversaw people serving under them do. It's just as simple as that. It took such little time after those initial reports of that situation coming out for, again, the entire foundation, the entire atmosphere around that football team and around that school to crumble pretty much instantly. In some aspects, one may argue, because again, I can't speak, I'm not a person anywhere near Penn State at this particular moment in time. In some aspects, they have never recovered from that situation. They are still more than a decade, even after this stuff was going down, have yet to truly find their way back to some sense of normalcy and proper order in that space. I did note that Bill O'Brien was there for a short amount of time. And honestly, again, decent as he may have been with them in terms of trying to get them back right from an overall production standpoint, there's no denying that, for better or for worse, when you think of the Penn State football program from the mid-2010s to now 2025, you think of James Franklin. There's absolutely no denying that whatsoever. One losing season in 12 years? 11, technically. Again, if you are anywhere else, in any other conference where you're not dealing with an Ohio State or a Michigan, and I guess now an Oregon, having a coach who can build your program from the ground up like that and get you into consistent relevancy is objectively a truly good thing that other organizations around the country would most certainly value and would most certainly want. Because even if a championship is the goal, a lot of other programs around the country are still trying their absolute hardest to sniff bowl eligibility, are absolutely still trying their hardest to be relevant in their own conference. Because for years, decades to this point, some of those teams have still been struggling to reach that mountaintop themselves. Franklin can say that at the very least, he has done that. He does have a Big Ten title to his name in 2016. He did just make the CFP last year, and he did have multiple seasons with at least 10 wins, while consistently being bowl eligible in and out on every season. For the most part that he's been there. And again, the 2020 season for everyone was just fucking strange. I watched something else from this YouTuber who happens to be a former student at Wisconsin. Even this person was talking about the fact that the 2020 season was weird in that sense because they were fucking 4-3. We see what the fuck they've turned into now. When you look at Van Dyke as their quarterback, or Mordecai, or fucking Mertz, they are not shit at this point. So that season was just kind of fluky for everybody. Just the cold hard truth about that situation. Again, when you're looking at him going up against Ohio State and Michigan and consistently failing, anybody in that position is definitely going to be looked at with a side eye. Anybody. Franklin kind of knew after a while what came with the territory and did not rise to the occasion. That's just the situation that he was put in from the jump, though. And from that standpoint, there isn't much that you can do there. There just isn't. But, again, like I said, you cannot separate that man for at least the last 11 years from this team. It would be hard to. Because for a team that was legitimately, you could say that after that Paterno and Sandusky situation, as a university and as a football program, and in other athletics, per se, they were lost. Absolutely lost. And you needed someone like James Franklin to help restore you to something concrete and something for the first time in maybe a few years, something positive, something that fans could rally around. And he did that for quite a long time and some change in some cases. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Yes, he might have been 1-18 against AP top 5 teams. You want to know what the only win was in that situation? I watched that game live as an Ohio State fan in 2016 on Saturday Night Football on ABC to see Grant Haley snatch that team from the jaws of defeat and get them the 24-21 win that night. That was the only one. And I could still tell you that there are so many Penn State fans out there who remember that game for all of its glory and all of the excitement that they had in that whiteout game in 2016. Now again, yes, when you are in a conference like the Big Ten, you want to consistently see more of that years and years down the line. Should that be the last game that Penn State fans are looking to find them rise above the competition and get to a true point of success? No. Because this is the same team who would have matches against Ohio State in back-to-back years. In fact, back-to-back years, where you give up 28 points in the fourth quarter to Ohio State. You have Drew Aller go something like 19 of 46 passing in the game next year. And then the game after that, the following year, you have multiple drives at the goal line get stopped by the Ohio State defense, preventing you from winning the ball game. Again, the little things. In most cases, James Franklin could not get that team to handle in big moments. But at the very least, for something that I can still remember more than 9 years later, and for something that still is within the hearts and minds of other Penn State fans around there for at least one time in the last decade. James Franklin can say that he got something to go right in that game. And not only did they win that game in a come-from-behind situation in a sold-out, wide-out crowd, they also won the Big Ten title in that same year. It is just an abject shame that he could not find himself in those situations more. It's as simple as that. So again, like I've said, man, like I've been saying, yes, you can come after James Franklin's potential ineptitude in these situations all you want to. You can. That's fair play. But you cannot totally disrespect every single thing that he did do at Penn State. Because for them on so many fronts, without James Franklin coming there and restoring that program to relevancy, they could have been in a much worse spot. I mean, one of the quotes that I was reading mentioned, and it makes sense also with some of like the documentaries that I've watched on it, unprecedented violations faced them after the Paterno Sandusky case. Right? And if they did not find that success on the football field with all those restrictions in place, one could think that there might have been a very real possibility of them for at least maybe a few years, maybe not for like a permanent period of time, right? But they could have been vacated as a program. They can have people, because again, naturally you're going to get funding for this stuff. They could have people cease that completely. Don't even worry about funding the football program. For at least a few years, we're suspending all operations. And you're not going to get football from Penn State. They could have done that at that time. They gave Bill O'Brien a chance to start leading them away from that. And then Franklin took them quite far. Even if, again, they might have fallen short. There's value in that. And that is what makes what could potentially happen after very, very, very interesting, to say the least. He's got a lot of options at this point in time. He does. But so some of the ones that I'm seeing within a few of these articles are wild. But I don't know, some of them make sense. All right, though. As this entire... We'll just break it down step by step. All right. Quote, this is going to be a long one. As one agent texted in the moments after Franklin's firing, there's no way he goes to Florida, right? Franklin is exactly the type of head coach Florida should consider. He's the ultimate floor raiser. Vanderbilt has only 2 9-win seasons post-1915. Both came under Franklin's direction, and he did in just 3 seasons with the Commodores. For all of Penn State's advantages, it lagged Ohio State and Michigan in terms of resources for most of Franklin's tenure. That wouldn't be the case at Florida, a program that invests at an annual national championship level. Given Franklin the type of talent that's already present on Florida's roster, and the Gators will instantly be in the SEC conversation, a place they haven't been in at least in half a decade. End quote. Florida? That Florida. I mean, hey. He does have SEC experience. I do briefly remember his time with Vanderbilt. And again, to have that kind of success with that kind of school is pretty fucking crazy. We talking about baseball, college baseball school. But Florida, man, let's think about it, because honestly, yeah, when it comes to NIL, when it comes to overall recruiting and funding and stuff like that, Florida's always going to be near the top of the SEC in that situation. They've just got a consistent pipeline that flows through there. The scouts that work on all that at the school, they know what they're doing. So there's no doubt that he's going to be able to find the talent. And again, they have a good roster of players as it is right now. But it's just about putting it all together. And ironically enough, this is where part of the downside and I guess the upside comes in at. Yes, Billy Napier has underwhelmed. And in fact, to tie it in here, because it does make sense, there have been recent reports that I've seen through videos, through articles now suggesting that Billy Napier could apparently be fired by as soon as weekend's end, and that he will not be able to survive another loss with this Florida team. And like, whoa, that took a drastic turn. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Florida hasn't even really cracked, like they've been bowl eligible, but they've been mediocre for quite some time. And the standard that has been set there over decades, when Urban Meyer was at the school and all sorts of things like that, man, they are a program that is looking to contend legitimately. And we can't even say that in the 2020s under Napier, Florida has even remotely been taken seriously. Sure, he'll get you a few wins every now and then. And unlike Franklin, I guess, he does find some success in beating ranked competition more frequently. But he has consistently underwhelmed himself. I mean, this is the same man in Billy Napier who lost to South Florida earlier in the season. In case y'all didn't forget about that. But he did beat Texas. He did beat Texas. So he's kind of conserved himself for at least a couple weeks now with that alone, I suppose. That kind of flip-flop and shit is not going to work for them anymore consistently. So if he does go out the door, yeah, a vacancy does potentially open up for Franklin. But when you think about it, when it comes to consistency in that standpoint, he and Napier rather, are in a similar boat. So I don't know if that's something that Florida will want to repeat, but at the same time, the talent there could rally around a guy like James Franklin in that locker room. And if you have a coach that you can truly rally around, because let's be honest, man. I mean, even after that LSU game, after that Miami game, man, people have come out and said that it's like, hey, man, they're starting to feel like the players in that locker room are losing faith in Billy Napier. And that's always a sign of imminent disaster for a head coach when you have stuff like that coming out. Franklin, for all the shit that he does get, might be able to restore it. And that could bring forth some really good fortune to Florida. They could very much use that right now. So that's not something that you could really rule out. All right. As this quote states right here, within the next section of this CBS article, quote, if I'm Arkansas, UCLA, Virginia Tech, or even a Wisconsin, which could open, I'm hoping Franklin is willing to consider me, end quote. Let's go step by step. Again, this same person, this same YouTuber who is from Wisconsin, actually made a video recently that I haven't watched, but he essentially just lit up Luke Fickell. Essentially just lit him up. Now, I don't know if that speaks for the entirety of the Wisconsin fan base, but it's probably clear at this point that the way that Wisconsin has just nosedived over the past few seasons, they are probably looking for a change in and of themselves. Just to be a relevant team in the Big Ten once again. And that is a standard. Yes, you're going to have your big dogs like Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon at this point. That is just how the landscape has been set up. But, again, there have been teams that have been able to successfully break through. And Wisconsin, at a point in time, was like that under Paul Chryst. Then he left. And again, it's been downhill ever since. They thought that Fickell could take him to that next level of consistent contention, and he hasn't done that. So now you're back at square one if you're Wisconsin. And again, Franklin would not be a bad option there. But would he still want to, because again, you're still going to be second fiddle. And Wisconsin themselves, even under Fickell, they've had their own struggles of getting good transfers out of the portal and good overall recruits through NIL tactics or just regular scouting. They've had their own trouble with that because they don't have the kind of resources that the big programs in the Big Ten have to go after some of this talent. You're to a lesser extent now because, again, Wisconsin is far off the deep end. You're going to have an even tougher time trying to convince people to go there and play for you. So I really don't know if that's something that he would want to do. But again, that's why this is more of a hope thing. Virginia Tech, honestly, I can get behind that. I don't know why, but I can get behind that. Because, let's be honest, man, not to just take a shot at a main quarterback here, but they need an entire reset on that team as it is. And it's going to start whenever Kyron Jones decides to move on to the NFL or to another team. They also mentioned that other players who were under Brent Pry at that point, they would probably be able to move with him elsewhere if he finds a landing spot at this point in time. Yeah. That would be a tremendous opening for Franklin. You talk about a program that is in need of a massive rebuild. Oh my goodness. Look no further than that. Similar thing though. This is going to have to be a little bit of a jumpstart thing. And in the ACC, even though it's not a team that is, a conference rather, that is really seen as stronger than either the Big Ten or the SEC, the reality is that there are still some top dogs in that conference who are going to command most of the recruiting attention. Yes, Clemson has gone through their own shit, but they would still definitely have the resources to go out there and get some of the best recruits in the nation. And it's if you aren't a big name school in that conference, you're going to have a tough time being able to pick up just about anybody. And UCLA, as this quote from this USA Today article states and puts it perfectly, even though it's relatively short from Topmeyer the day following the news, quote, "The Bruins need a program builder. The former Penn State coach is that, even if he almost always loses the big games. Franklin and Westwood might make sense if he didn't just lose to UCLA. Imagine that introductory news conference. We're pleased to announce we hired the coach that couldn't beat our interim head coach. That's a tough sell. End quote. Would have been my point exactly. Like, that would just be such a weird dynamic. If you can't beat them, join them? Why would either side want to make that happen? Why? Like, no. Just no. No. And then Arkansas. Even if this is something that you are gonna have to hope for, if you are an Arkansas fan, if this is even a likelihood, let's be honest. There's gonna be a vacancy because given Bobby Petrino's fucking track record, in less than a full season, he's gonna leave again. So you're gonna have an ample opportunity to make a decision on something like this. His ass is gonna just up and leave the fucking program again. This man is he's not a man of his fucking word. You really expect this nigga now, as old as he is, to hold up his end of the bargain for long enough to have faith in him? Good luck with that. And in the event that his ass is gone, again, Franklin would probably be the guy to look for here. Again, under Pittman, mediocre is all fuck. All right, there's no getting around that. And it's going to be tough to reconstruct them, man. They need help in a lot of different positions. But it would be a strong school to go to. I will say. There's also another component to this that could be interesting, as this next quote states from the CBS Sports article. Perhaps Franklin wants to go a little closer to home. Maryland once named Franklin its coaching waiting, but that divorce got a bit ugly late. However, if Mike Locksley doesn't win down the stretch, the Terps could try to bring Franklin back to the DMV where he's as connected as anyone. End quote. Shockingly enough, before this, I did not know that he was from Maryland. But yeah, and especially with the way that it's gone in reverse in terms of coaches potentially going to Penn State, the hometown connection appears to be very, very, very strong. But honestly, with the fact that they've just gotten Malik Washington this season, he appears to be really good for them. And, they got off to the hot start. And they've got just about as good of a chance to at least be good enough for bowl contention throughout the rest of the season, as well as potentially dropping off towards the tail end. And I guess that's really what it will end up hinging on for the most part here. Simply put. So yeah, he's definitely got his options. They also go through and say that, hey, he might take a different route, joining, I guess, TV, doing analyst work and things like that, taking about a year off to handle those things, and then trying to come back in about a year, retool, recalibrate, maybe reconstruct his whole philosophy and get back into the swing of things that way. But hey, like I just said, Penn State also has a litany of decisions to make within the next few months themselves. It's not a process that you can necessarily rush, but even though, again, he might not have much to show for himself. You are trying to replace a man in James Franklin who had a 104-45 overall record with your school, while again restoring you to relevancy and getting the reputation of Penn State University out of the fucking shitter that Paterno and Sandusky put you in under their supervision and supposed leadership. Those are going to be big shoes in that regard to fill. And again, they're accepting that by making this decision in the middle of the season and also eating a $50 million buyout. Take that. I mean, shit. So, the question lies in the fact that who is exactly the next guy up. This Sports Illustrated article lists 6 names, and I've also heard some others. Some also just like mix here. There's a few I have heard both here through other media, so I'll just stick with what they're saying here. And I will say that I don't necessarily agree with every single coach that they put on this list. But we'll start it up. The first coach that they mention is Matt Rhule, current Nebraska head coach. And their connection here, they state that Rhule, and I guess the AD of the school, spent 4 years together at Temple, where Kraft was the athletic director and Rhule was the head football coach. They celebrated together on the field at Lincoln Financial Field in 2015 when Temple beat Penn State 27-10. End quote. The sort of rationale here also states that Rhule has a career 64-7 record as a college head coach, including a 2-23 record against AP top 25 teams, as noted by CBS Sports' Brad Crawford in July. But Rhule made Temple, Baylor, and Nebraska competitive, and like Franklin, is a program builder. Still, is that what Penn State needs right now? End quote. Also, it is worth noting that Matt Rhule is from the Pennsylvania area. So again, connection in that aspect is going to be incredibly strong. But is it enough? I would think not. The fundamental question here within the last couple sentences. Matt Rhule is actively trying to build up Nebraska right now. He hasn't been there for long enough. Why? Why would he feel the need to flip on them right now and go to Penn State starting off at a way earlier jumping point than he is already at right now with this current Nebraska squad, who's off to a pretty solid start, pretty respectable start to the season? They are actively trying to get themselves better right now. There's no reason for him to start at a much earlier point in time and just change again the entire philosophy of what it is that you're doing with Nebraska at this moment. It just wouldn't make sense from that regard. Also, again, Nebraska overall within the past couple decades as an entire unit have struggled. They have absolutely struggled. In fact, been non-existent damn near in their own right against ranked teams. Matt Rhule is no different. Just because he has one more win in top 25 situations, per se. But again, just a 4%, 8% rather, winning percentage. Are we being serious right now, y'all? Why would Penn State, again, after having all those historically bad struggles with Franklin in ranked competition and ranked matchups in the AP poll, why would they take that on? It's just not something that makes sense for both sides. Like, Penn State needs a philosophical change. They need a head coach who is going to approach things much differently. Because the mentality, I mean, yes, they've hit rock bottom, I would think. There's no denying that. But their goal, again, they are trying to contend for a title. You know, no matter what it takes. They've made that astonishingly clear. So there's no way that Matt Rule would be picked in this situation. And again, Matt Rule himself, as a coach of the same archetype, damn near, he's actively doing good work with Nebraska right now. He's in a good situation. They love him over there. Why would he leave them? Why would he leave them? Seriously. And then this next name is also something that's just like, ooh, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. And also, I guess, again, I was going to hold off on talking about it, but oh my goodness, there is absolutely no way that I can deny what I saw yesterday night on ESPN ticker relating to this guy in current Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti. His connection comes with, honestly, the fact that he is as one of these sections state, and also from what I've heard, he is from Pittsburgh. And he coached at Pitt before. Strong, undeniable connection there. And as this quote states right here, in just 2 seasons at Indiana, Cignetti is 17-2 with 2 AP Top 10 wins and a CFP berth last year. Additionally, he was the first D1 head coach to start 8-0 or better in consecutive seasons at different schools. Cignetti completely turned around one of the worst FBS programs in just 1 year. And again, tremendous credit to what he has fucking done. Now, yes, one of those losses did come against Ohio State. Definitely did a lot of trolling in that one. But there's no denying it, because guess what? Think about this. Try this on for size. The first D1 head coach all time to start 8-0 or better in consecutive seasons at different schools with James Madison in Indiana. If they continue handling their business, he, by himself, is on pace for 3 straight 8-0 or better starts to a college football season. Because Indiana has been rolling. They have been rolling so far. This man literally just pulled off the biggest win in school history for Indiana just last week against Oregon. And they are now the 3rd best team in the nation per the AP poll. Again, it makes sense because, man, just high flattery in this situation. Like, this is honestly impressive stuff. Indiana has been nothing short of a laughingstock in the FBS for all this time. They legitimately have got all time one of the worst ever records in the nation in history. And yet in just 2 seasons, they look like a damn near powerhouse. To go from point A to point B and 0 to 100 that fucking quickly is certainly something that a lot of teams could be interested in. And honestly, you can see why Penn State could potentially have a sort of interest in him. You can see why. That short amount of time is already seeing you find a great amount of overall success. I mean, that is just not something that you can knock. And again, that man came out and said that he beats top 25 teams last season. Everybody thought he was a motherfucking joke. Like, okay. You've seen what he's just done. Now, ironically enough, both of the losses are against AP top 25 teams. Had to go over to South Bend in the CFP last season. And that ended up being rough for sure. And then again, Ohio State, like I just mentioned. That's not a half bad resume, to say the least, in just such a short amount of time. They also mentioned that he worked under Nick Saban for about 3-4 seasons at Alabama as a recruiting coordinator and a wide receivers coach here. So man has some experience for sure in damn near every facet. And Penn State, again, could tremendously use something like that. But there's just one small problem here. With all of that buzz recently coming out, word got back around to Indiana. And they said, hell no. Hell no. You're not getting your hands on Curt Cignetti. Because guess what we're going to do? We already signed the man to an 8-year, $72 million contract last year. And I remember when that happened. And they won up themselves. Yesterday night, they signed Cignetti to an 8-year, $93 million contract extension, making him one of the highest paid head coaches in the nation right now, I would have to believe, with an average of $11.6 million plus in average salary per year. That man is absolutely there to stay. The fact that this article came out just days earlier and yesterday night, just like that, in one fell swoop, the hopes of this writer and the hopes of the Penn State fan base to go out and get Cignetti just like that are absolutely gone. There is no way possible they would be able to get him in a situation like this, because he simply does not seem to be slowing down. And you're committing to him long term like that this early? Well deserved. Again, he deserves all the credit, man. He has been a tremendous coach for them so far. You're making a statement right there that he will absolutely not be touched by Penn State. Y'all fucked around and poked the bear. I get that he's that good and you wanted him. But man, that was the most immediate response they could have had. So he's off the board. Just like that. Now for these next few names, can run through them a little quicker. Not as familiar with them, but it's essential to say that all three of these guys have at least had some connection with Penn State within at least the past decade or so. They have current Duke head coach Manny Diaz, who, as this article states from Sports Illustrated, he was the Temple head coach in 2018, left for Miami, and he was the DC for Penn State under James Franklin for a couple of years. So that does make sense. He's already known amongst a few former players. So having that familiarity and that continuity might help Penn State in that situation. They also mentioned current offensive coordinator for Oregon, Will Stein, which, if you can't beat them, make them join you. Poach one of their guys to get an advantage. I mean, Oregon has been nothing short one of the best offenses in the FBS over the past couple of seasons. So maybe kind of having a mentality there might allow them to expand a little more. Get even more creative with some of the stuff that they typically do. Because by no means is Penn State necessarily a passing-centric offense. But, having that kind of mindset in there could make them more explosive. Maybe as explosive as they've damn near ever been, going back to some of those days in the mid-2010s. They could very much use that. So, hey, man. You also have Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady mentioned here. They mentioned that he was a graduate assistant at Penn State for James Franklin, and he was with them in their Big Ten title run in 2016. He is also credited as being responsible for that dynamic passing offense of LSU in 2019 with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, amongst others, as a passing game coordinator. And to leave college football on that note, on that kind of history that Joe Burrow set that year, that's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good. Now, they also ask themselves here, because again, these are essential questions to consider. There's no real telling whether or not Joe Brady would even want to return to college football right now. So it would need, a lot of time to figure that out. And also, the way that the regular season goes, and the way that the Bills have constantly been in contention for the past few years, you're not going to have an immediate window to go out and get them unless their season ends early. And even still, you can't guarantee that would happen within the transfer portal window. Because this is the interesting thing. Now that it has been approved for January, it leaves stuff like this happening, puts that in a very interesting situation. Because typically, players, when they're trying to make this move, they've got to be sure or want to be sure that everything would be in place, not just incentives, NIL deals, all that stuff, roster spots on the potential depth chart and things of that nature, right? But some players still, to this day, look at the coaches and see them as the determining factor behind their decisions. If Penn State still has not decided on someone to take the mantle of permanent head coach for that school by that window, that could pose a tremendous problem for them when it comes to being able to land recruits who are trying to move over from other schools. That is just the truth of the matter. But maybe they'd be willing to wait and feel that it might be worth it. As this quote states, another interesting dynamic, former Penn State trustee and athletics donor Terry Pegula owns the Bills. End quote. So that could get tricky. That could get very tricky. But I suppose, again, that does look pretty damn good. You can't deny that at all. And then, and honestly, man, I don't even know what to say about this. I ain't even about to go with no fucking quotes here or nothing like that. All you need to know is just how fucking crazy that shit sounds. All right, so just imagine this. Put yourself in this position, right? You are Penn State. Currently just lost James Franklin. You are trying to find a head coach who can consistently win the big games against the big time competition. And yet, even going so far past your own pride here, it might be hard to do. It might be hard to do at first. But in doing this, you look to someone that you would probably never even consider in the first place. Someone who has made a career out of winning big games against big time competition. Someone who has consistently created powerhouses in multiple conferences with Utah, with Florida, with Ohio State. Someone who in that stretch at Ohio State made a career out of making your program look so inferior outside of that game in 2016. The direction you're looking in, the person you're looking for. Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer? What in the hell would make a person think that out of every other coaching candidate out there, you could go for literally anybody outside of Cignetti or Rule? Your choice is to go with a man in Urban Meyer who made an Ohio State career out of shitting on you every single time outside of one game. And making that Ohio State Penn State game year in, year out a consistently heated rivalry. What makes you think that they would both be able to agree on getting over all that shit just to have Meyer coach on the sidelines shit again? Why would they do that? Why would he accept that? He has no reason to. Do you know how desperate that makes you look? I get it. It does make sense. But why? I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, what? Yo, no, that's not happening. I mean, come on, man. There's no way. There's just like the second I saw this shit, I'm like, what are you fucking talking about, bro? And it's like crazy too, because this Sports Illustrated article is coming specifically from a writer who, again, is a Penn State fan. This is under Penn State Nittany Lions on Sports Illustrated. So you're really sitting here telling me that after the root, the PTSD and generational trauma that this man, Urban Meyer, put on your fucking program for years, you'd be willing to get over all of that just to have him coach on your sidelines? That's not going to happen. That's impossible. How are you going to get people to rally around that? And even he, at the end of this, has to ask himself this question: do both sides really have the stomach for it? Would they really be able to come to grips with doing that shit? Seriously. And I could not, in a million years, see that shit happening. There's no way. There's no way. I gotta shut that down right now. There's no shot. No. like, man, if I just sit here and discuss that, because, oh my gosh, if I continue to get in that, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose my mind. But I'm just going to end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.